Margaret spent 3 years training her hybrid clematis up an ornamental iron arbor. Yesterday afternoon, it was a breathtaking waterfall of violet blooms. This morning, she walked out with her coffee, and the entire vine was hanging limp, blackened, looking like charred, wet newspaper. It's the kind of garden heartbreak that makes you want to apologize to your houseplants. She reaches for a shovel, assuming a mysterious root disease killed it overnight. But plant pathologists, who study exactly how clematis collapses, discovered something that changes this story completely. Millions of clematis are sold every year in shallow plastic nursery pots. Yet most care tags still tell gardeners to plant them at the same depth as the container, a mistake that leaves the crown vulnerable when a common airborne fungus strikes. Today, we're fixing that mistake. We'll break this into 3 chapters: the vascular siege, the 3 crown mistakes, and the underground bunker protocol. Stay until the end, because there's a pruning technique that can trigger a spectacular second flush of flowers from the same vine. Today, we reclaim the commons in your backyard. Chapter 1. The vascular siege. What most gardeners call wilt isn't a fatal root disease. It is a localized vascular invasion by the fungal pathogen calophoma clematidina. The microscopic spores enter through a tiny stem scratch, 10 to 40 days before the vine collapses, multiplying inside the plant's water pipes until they completely shut off the flow. It behaves like an unwanted houseguest, locking themselves in your bathroom and turning off the main water valve. It can produce aggressive adventitious roots from buried stem nodes, provided those nodes remain in complete darkness. When you plant your clematis deep, burying the first 2 or 3 sets of leaf nodes 2 to 6 inches below the soil, you create an underground bud bank. You build a backup plant. If disease or winter frost destroys every stem above ground, those buried dormant buds stay protected and push out fresh growth, turning what looks like total disaster into a temporary setback. Understanding the disease is only the beginning. Most gardeners unknowingly create the perfect conditions for that fungus to attack. Let's fix the 3 biggest mistakes. Chapter 2. The 3 crown mistakes. Point 1. The cool feet humidity trap. Traditional gardening advice says you should shade clematis roots by planting thick, low-growing perennials around the crown. Modern plant pathology has challenged that practice. Dense planting around the lower 12 inches traps moisture and creates a stagnant, humid microclimate where airborne fungal spores can germinate. You think you're tucking your vine in for a cozy nap, but you're really building a biological sauna for mold. Clematis needs air circulation at the crown, not a damp blanket. But excess moisture isn't the only hidden enemy. Many gardeners accidentally weaken their vines months before winter even arrives. Point 2. The late-season nitrogen trap. Dumping high nitrogen fertilizer around your vine in late summer forces a flush of soft, watery growth. That tender tissue becomes an easy target when winter frost arrives. It's like wearing a silk t-shirt into an Arctic blizzard. As the water inside those young stems freezes, the cells rupture and the bark cracks open, creating perfect entry wounds for fungal spores the following spring. Build the framework with phosphorus early, then stop feeding nitrogen late. But before you even reach for fertilizer, the most dangerous mistake happens with your own hands. Point 3. The ranunculin hazard. Millions of gardeners pull dead clematis leaves with bare hands, unaware of the plant's chemical defenses. Every cell contains a compound called ranunculin. The moment the tissue is crushed, it converts into protoanemonin, a powerful blistering agent. One careless cleanup session can leave your hands looking like you lost a fight with a wild cat. Always wear gloves when pruning or removing damaged growth, and keep every cutting away from children, dogs, and horses, which can suffer severe mouth irritation and stomach distress if they chew it. Now that we've eliminated the 3 biggest failure points, it's time to build the underground system that makes a clematis survive for decades instead of seasons. Chapter 3. The underground bunker protocol. Step 1. The 12 by 12 foundation. Begin by digging a planting hole 12 inches deep and 12 inches wide. It looks more like you're setting a fence post than planting a flowering vine. That extra space gives the roots room to expand quickly and form partnerships with beneficial mycorrhizal fungi that strengthen the plant below ground. Step 2. Expose the hidden nodes. Lift the clematis from its nursery pot and remove the lowest sets of leaves from the bottom 6 inches of the stems. It feels like giving your prize plant a bad military haircut, but don't worry. You are exposing the dormant node junctions, where new roots will develop. Step 3. Bury the stem deep. Ignore the nursery soil line. Lower the entire root ball until those exposed stem nodes sit 2 to 6 inches below your garden soil. Your neighbors may think you've buried the plant too deep, but you're actually building its insurance policy. Those buried nodes respond by producing adventitious roots, creating an underground bud bank that can replace the entire vine if the top growth is ever lost. Step 4. Build the crown. Backfill with finished compost, mixed with a generous handful of bone meal. Think of it as serving the plant a slow-release phosphorus breakfast, instead of another sugary nitrogen snack. The phosphorus encourages strong crown and root development, while the compost improves long-term soil structure. Firm the soil gently to remove large air pockets without crushing the roots. Step 5. The mulch ring. Finish with a 2-inch layer of organic mulch to stabilize moisture and soil temperature. Leave a strict 1-inch gap around the main stems so air can circulate freely. Think of it as buttoning up a warm winter coat, but leaving the collar open so the plant can still breathe. That simple gap can make the difference between a healthy crown and one that stays damp enough for disease to return. The recovery timeline and the double flush hack. Within 2 weeks of deep planting, the buried stem begins producing a network of new adventitious roots. By the 2nd year, your clematis no longer depends on a single vulnerable trunk. Instead, it develops an underground crown that sends up multiple strong stems every spring. If you're growing a Group 2 large flowered hybrid, there's one final trick. After the first flush of blooms fades, follow each stem 12 to 18 inches below the spent flower head until you find a pair of plump, dormant buds. Make a clean cut just above them. It's the closest thing gardening has to pressing a replay button. That single cut redirects the plant's auxin flow, waking those hidden buds and producing a spectacular second flush of flowers 6 to 8 weeks later. Which clematis variety or pruning group are you planting deep this season? Tell me in the comments using exactly 3 words. No more, no less. Let's see who follows directions. If you know someone whose favorite climbing vine suddenly turned black and collapsed overnight, share this video with them. It might save years of growth from ending up in the compost pile. This isn't just about saving a plant. It's about understanding how resilience is built. A clematis can look completely dead above ground, while an entire backup system waits beneath the soil for the right moment to grow again. Research into horticultural therapy suggests that spending time working with living plants can support mental well-being and reduce stress. Clematis is a perfect reminder that what looks like failure on the surface isn't always the end. Sometimes the real strength is hidden where nobody can see it.